Good God. Yeah, it's early now. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 58th day of my editing stream. Today, we're going to be going over the quasi-infamous 12-page blowjob scene. God. You do it to yourself. You do. And that's what really hurts, is that you do it to yourself. Just you. You and no one else. Got a new batch of cold brew this morning. It's all right. It's not less sharp than the one from yesterday. But not like a marked improvement or anything. So I'm gonna try some other beans with the next batch, but free is good. Well, like essentially free. Oh, all right, so we're gonna have to get down to it. Chapter 74 is just a real clusterfuck of a chapter, and we're gonna see what we can do to sort it out here. But let's read a little bit of our boy Baudelaire. So this is poem 61, Song for Late in the Day. Although your wicked brows belie the angel in your eyes, it is a blessed sorcery by which I am beguiled. With all the ineffectual awe of prostrate votaries, I worship at your trivial and tantalizing shrine. Wilderness and desert haunt the tumult of your hair. Without a word your lips propose the riddle of the Sphinx. When you move, the shifting scent, as if a censer swayed, prepares the advent of your flesh. The night is warm with you. Where is the drug that works as well as your untroubled sloth? You know the secret. At your touch, the dead return to life. There is a throbbing intercourse between your breasts and thighs. The very cushions are enticed by your slow attitudes. Occasionally, to assuage mysterious appetites, your lazy kisses alternate with unexpected bites, and you laugh as you lacerate my undefended skin. Then, gentle as the rising moon, you raise your eyes to mine. Beneath your satin slippers, as beneath your silken feet, I lay my hopes of happiness, my genius and my fate. Light of my life, My soul's release, I long for your embrace. Explode in one dissolving blast, this black Siberia. Mmm, it's gangsta shit. What do we have right here? Perfectly good coffee, and he makes it cold. Yeah, it just works out better if you're going to be sitting here for hours. Like, because literally I'll be sitting here for 3 hours and not getting up. And any coffee that I make is going to go cold. So if you're going to be cold all along, you might as well start cold and reap the benefits of expanded caffeine extraction and smoother taste that you can get from drinking pure black coffee made by yours truly. I think our drip was like a little bit too fast on this batch, and we didn't quite get enough absorption. It's a tricky business, this cold brew game. But yeah, now that I'm drinking it, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. All right, so as much as it pains me, we got to return to this chapter because holy fuck, even just thinking about it through the day, I'm like, this is a little excessive. So we're gonna just rework the whole thing, and until we have a good chapter. I refuse to be defeated by some overeager bullshit. But yeah, if you've never tuned into this story before, this is a story of a young woman who, let me see. So Chad asks, why is there a 12-page blowjob scene in your book? I don't know. To tell you the truth, I don't know why I wrote this fucking thing, but I definitely have to pay the price. Spend a decade drinking truck stop coffee every morning. Cold coffee just seemed like a sin. Some might say that drinking truck stop coffee every morning is the real sin. There are so many good types of coffee out there. There's a whole world behind Folgers. You know what I mean? But anyhow, this is the story of a young woman who starts to develop telepathy with a young man that she's dating, and there's a lot of fucking in it, and that fucking is very detailed in the book, and some might say too detailed, some meaning everyone. So let's take a gander. It puts hair on your chest. I don't know, how good is it to have hair on your chest? I'd rather just wear a shirt and be like a luscious twink. That's my theory. Let me get some water. Mm. When Freya woke, the sides of her face were sore. She realized it was from smiling so much. Yeah, tempo-wise. Freya woke up sore. Not only the bruise at her hip, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is that? The bruise at her hip. Yeah. Yeah, so how would she have fallen? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is this actually like a construct worth keeping? Hold on. Yeah, let's try and dispense through some bullshit here. Freya woke up sore, smarting when she rolled onto the new bruise on her hip. The sides of her face ached as well. It took her a moment to figure out why. It was from smiling so much. Her muscles weren't used to it. When was the last time she'd woken up smiling like that? Smarting when her weight shifted onto the new bruise on her hip. So it's welcome to the stream, Baron von Haggard. I'll get like a little less sedate as I wake up. What is it? It's 4 a.m. is a little bit early for me. Usually we try to start by like 5 a.m. But I woke up at like 3 in the morning and I could not get back to sleep. So Freya woke up sore, smarting when her weight shifted onto the new bruise on her hip. The sides of her face ached. It took her a moment to figure out why. Her muscles weren't used to smiling so much. She leaned back against Dan and kept smiling. It didn't matter if it hurt. When was the last time she'd woken up like that? The size of her. Not caring if it hurt. When was the last time she'd woken up smiling like that? Certainly not since Randall died. Maybe not since she was 8 years old, when they were visiting Cape Canaveral and she woke up before everyone else, overflowing with excitement. Freya was wrapped in Dan's arms. She could feel the slow movement of his breathing against her back. He'd fallen asleep first. She could remember the little tremors that rippled through him as he drifted off. She listened to his breathing growing slower, feeling each beat of his heart against her back, trying to stay awake, to remain in this moment. She listened to his breathing growing. She listened to his breathing. She listened to his breathing as it grew slower, feeling each beat of his heart against her back. Yeah, that's too much. She listened to his breathing slow. Oh yeah, that's so wonky. So how long have I been writing? Well, this book specifically, we started in 2016 and worked on it kind of half on, half off for about a year. It was like my rainy day project. And then this year, we started working on it kind of exclusively for a long time. This is my 8th book, so I've been at it for a little bit. 8th book, and it's about 800 pages long. So yeah, it's a feature. Mm-hmm. Wow, nice. That's more than I've read in my life. Sad to say. Well, that's not true. I mean, keep in mind, you're constantly reading every day that you're on the internet. Like words are bombarding you at all times. You've read probably thousands of articles, hundreds and thousands of lines of chat. Every day, your eyes are like constantly assaulted by signs and directions and things that you have to do for work. So just keep in mind that while you may not be a big fiction reader or whatever, there, you are reading probably like, I don't know, something like 20 or 30,000 pages a year, just passively. There's no escaping it. Like all these words that are on the screen, you're reading them right now. And like one thing to keep in mind is that there is a budget for how much information a person can absorb through reading. Like it does wear you down as you're pulling it in. So yeah, like if you notice, like fewer people read recently, and it's not because they're reading less. It's actually because they're reading more, but more is like more files for their job, more articles on the internet, more. So yeah, it's like yeah, everybody who is convinced that they're not a big reader is generally reading all the time. they just don't. They don't think I like all those little words as as writing, but they add up. Mm. Oh, yeah. All right. She remembered listening to his breathing as it grew slower, feeling his heartbeat against her back, and trying to stay awake for as long as she could. She'd been convinced for some reason that he would be gone when she woke up. She didn't deserve to feel so happy. Certain she didn't deserve to feel so happy. But Dan hadn't vanished in the night. It wasn't a dream. She'd had no dreams at all. It wasn't a dream. There had been no dreams at all. Her eyes drifted through the flickering light of the fireplace to the countertop in the bathroom. Oh, yeah. Let me see. So, oh, thank you for your well wishes right there. Yeah, if you know anybody that likes science fiction, feel free to turn them on to this website. Well, actually, the website's not even on my shirt, but like it'll scroll by zachzyz.com. All my books are available for free. I don't believe in charging for information if I can help it. So yeah, and I do this every single morning. But yeah, best of luck in your travels there, and get some coffee in you. Shout out to this miraculous bean. Mm. I swear to God, caffeine is the only thing keeping me alive. Was a nice young man. I wish him well on his endeavors. All right. I'm only assuming that he's a nice young man because he's a baron rather than a baroness. That's what titles do for you. They give you specificity. Hmm. 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 Okay. The room was flickering in the light of the fireplace. All right. Let me see if they have a Michelin star. Dining. What do they have there? Peak foliage season. It's a bucket list restaurant, but I don't think that they have a well, they have a 5-star thing on TripAdvisor. That's the #1 restaurant in Lower Waterford, right there. Oh, they respond. The owner of the restaurant responds to every single thing on TripAdvisor. That's actually kind of endearing. Uh, the room was flickering in the light of the fireplace, and her eyes drifted through the dancing shadows of the big tub in the bathroom. I feel the candles around the tub were still burning. Most had guttered out. Her pants were neatly folded beside the sink, and the star ball was still in her pocket. She could feel it if she concentrated. The unity. Uh, uh, Unity was growing stronger, lasting longer. Yeah, I mean that's the idea. I don't expect people to be fixated on the screen for every second of this, but yeah, it's not terrible to have somebody quietly reading in the background while you're painting your Warhammer figurines or compiling your TPS reports or whatever it is that people are doing out there in Radioland. Mm-hmm. The unity was growing stronger, lasting longer. It felt like only a matter of time until they were sharing their dreams. How long until they were sharing every waking moment? How long until they were dreaming together? Freya remembered the shadow at her window, the cliffs tumbling into the sea. How long until they were sharing every waking moment? No, that's not better. Perhaps they would even begin to dream together. Yeah, so I just don't want to have like the whole uh let me see, winding down for my evening, gonna go to bed in a couple hours or so. Huh. Well, if you're winding down your evening at 3 in the morning, how does time and space work? Then yeah, you're probably somewhere in Europe. That'd be my guess, but I could be totally wrong. Or maybe like I should be able to figure this out from where Spathiwa is. So it's about 6 hours ago in Europe. So it's like almost close to midnight in like England right now. But then if you're winding down your evening and gotta go to bed in a couple hours or so, more likely you're like further east. So maybe like around Greece or something. Oh no, just on a night shift. Well, that throws everything the fuck off. Yeah, I worked the night shift for 7 years. Yeah. Oh shit, I actually worked the night shift for 7 years in New Orleans. I used to run a hotel in the French Quarter. That's right. You had mentioned something about that. Oh, Louisiana. Mm. I've lost my accent until I drink, for the most part. I guess a little bit of it's there, but for the most part, people don't think I'm Southern. I've just been up here a long time. The thought worried her. Freya remembered the shade tapping at her window. Freya remembered the shadow tapping at her window. The cliffs tumbling into the sea. What if Dan couldn't take it? What if her dreams drove him away? I will protect him, Freya resolved. She visualized herself in a suit of gleaming armor, cutting the shade apart with a shining sword. Hmm. Oh, Lord. She forced herself to be still. It was still dark outside. It was dark outside, and she didn't want to wake him. His arm moved beneath her. She could see a slight twitch in his fingers. What about Dan's dreams? Could they be worse than hers? What if he dreamed about other girls or other boys? Freya couldn't picture how that would make her feel. You can't control your dreams, Freya told herself, but she wasn't sure she believed that. She dwelt on the thought, wondering how much of her dreams were her, how much was just random noise. She dwelt on the thought, wondering how much of her dreams were her, how much was just random noise, how much was manipulation from the star ball. Again, she remembered Dan asking her if she'd really liked him before she found it. Mm-hmm. 3:30 a.m. in Louisiana. Ugh. Yeah, it was the time of the night where people would stop coming through the hotel, and the only people who would I'd have to deal with would people who would like come up and try to piss on our the entrance to the hotel. It was like inset a little from the street, and people would come in to the corner of the door and just piss in the corner of our door. And so I would go out there and fling the door open. When you catch them like pissing, and as they were pissing, I would like boot them in the small of the back, or just kick them in the ass or something like that, and they'd like fly into the wall and piss all over themselves. And I'd be like, "Get the fuck out of here!" You know, because I was the one who had to clean up the piss, and yeah, I just did not appreciate these drunken fucking tourists pissing on the front of our building night after night because it was my home. And yeah, we would just for a while, a good friend of mine worked at the hotel with me. And there was a hotel room like right over the front door. And sometimes I would just have him sitting out there with like a 5-gallon bucket of water, and he would just drench these motherfuckers after I booted them. They were like running off down the road towards Iberville Street, or Rampart Street, I guess, because Iberville's in a different direction there for the most part. And usually the people were like so drunk that they wouldn't give a shit. Sometimes they'd fucking fight back. And that was fun too. So been to New Orleans a few times. It's a gross city. It truly is one of the grossest cities in the Union right there. It's at the bottom of a swamp, and it tastes and smells like it. Shout outs to that scent of vomit underlying literally everything in the city. Ooh. Yeah, I just don't think they should be allowed to sell those drinks with that grain alcohol in it. That's always the problem. Like the people who are drinking those hand grenades. You see one of them walking down the street, like, New Orleans' strongest drink. You know that motherfucker is going to be throwing up jambalaya and red beans and rice and all kinds of nonsense. And it's going to be like a purple fucking arc of that and just pooled somewhere on the street. Ugh. Yeah, good times in old New Orleans there. The fucking corrupt cops and the women like flashing themselves for plastic trinkets, and the thousands of horn players that all sound exactly the same, and the constant rain and the humidity and the mosquitoes every night just covered with fucking welts from these things. And you get to the point where you get bitten and you could actually like watch the welt go down because you're so used to just getting eaten alive by these motherfuckers, and no air conditioning at the spot where I did my job every single day. And yeah, just hard times in old New Orleans. Yeah, it's easy to like, because at the time I didn't have to pay any rent because I just lived at the hotel and just did whatever I wanted. I would work like 70 hours a week, and on the night shift I would just bring my computer downstairs and fucking play World of Nerdcraft all night and talk with drunk people and ogle girls, and you know, what a world. I just had no worries and no real responsibility at all. And I guess not much has changed. I'm still not super responsible for any of this, but yeah, it was an interesting time there. How much was the star ball? Again, she remembered Dan asking her if she liked him before she found the star ball. Did she really care about him? Did he really care about her? Was he in thrall, a slave to a little black shard buried in his palm? Was this just part of the star ball's plan to keep her alive? Oh, this is too much show. I'm in North Louisiana. It's just as bad as the South, but with less fun stuff. I will tell you, you know, I don't know if you got like a family down there or you're going to school or what you got going on, but Lord, if you were in the South, and I'm talking the real South, like fucking Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas, fucking any of those states. Also South Carolina. Let's throw that into the fucking mix. And let's also get Tennessee and Kentucky in there. If you're in any of the states that I just mentioned, it's time to get the fuck out. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've been to California, but California is fucking gorgeous and it's nice all the time. You go to the city of San Diego and you're like, why was I in the South for so long? As soon as you get out of the South, everybody's IQ goes up by about 20 fucking points, right? And it's very easy to underestimate what a big deal that is. Just like you talk to a standard person on the street and you're like, oh, like I don't have to explain things 5 fucking times to everybody there. They're just smart, right? And the people around you, because they're a little bit smarter and a little bit sharper and they're trying harder and the stakes are higher because they'll freeze to death if winter comes and they don't have a place to stay. They will motivate you to work harder yourself. Like when I lived in the South, I would go out and write like maybe 1 or 2 times a week. And I was just taking my time, I didn't have to I didn't have to do anything. You know what I mean? Like if I became a famous author, oh yeah, that'll happen sometime. Like I didn't put the work in. I wasn't like I was good at the job that I did there, but like running a hotel, not fucking difficult, right? I didn't have to try. And it was only when I got to New York where everybody else was competitive and I realized that I would be buried if I didn't compete too, that I really started to feel more alive. And my time in the South just seems like one long daydream. You know what I mean? And sometimes like you get so sharpened up and tense up here and the stress starts to wear down on you and you like long for that daydream. But I'm not going back to Louisiana. I'm telling you that. I'm fucking looking it up here. So according to Jira, you have to have a very high IQ to write science fiction blowjob scenes. In the last 2 years, I got a decent job, and I bought a house, and I have a woman to marry sometime soon. Things are puttering in the right direction. Well, to me, the right direction is always out of Louisiana. Um, but I don't know. Keep your options open if you can. When I retire here in a longer amount of time than I've been alive, I plan to move to Colorado. So Colorado is fucking amazing, right? Denver, Colorado is amazing. And I'm an old I don't look like it, but I'm old, right? I've been around the track many a time. I've seen a lot of shit going on. Not as much as I will have seen in like 20 years or something like that. But I will tell you, the time to move to the place where you want to live is now. Like even if you have like a job and you're planning to because it's easy to set up again to get a new job. The economy's doing really well right now. Everything is in good shape, right? This is a Wuhan virus is about to wipe out a quarter of the country. Everything's in a good spot, but the longer you stay in one place, the more stuck you are there. The less chance you'll ever get to actually go where you want to be at. So I don't know you real well. I don't know your situation and so forth. But if you dream of living in Colorado, which is a fantastic dream, Denver is just fucking amazing. I could live out there in a heartbeat. It's gorgeous. The climate's good. The people are chill. The food is good. There's better work. Then you'll make more money in Denver than you'll make in like basically like 1 year of working in Denver is like 2 years of working in northern Louisiana. And yeah, man, I don't know what you know how to do or whatever, but Jesus Christ, consider getting the fuck over there. Because if you don't, you'll wake up 20 years from now and be like, huh, yeah, I wanted to live in Denver. Like I'm real fortunate here because I love New York. I've always known that I was going to live here, and I came up here. I hated the shit out of it for like the first 3 years, but now I can't get enough of it. The city is like addicting, um, and it feels like home to me. But yeah, like I'm fortunate there. But um, yeah, it's funny the way that time moves on, and the things that you planned and intended to do don't really happen if you haven't like seized the opportunity to get a hold of them there. All right, hold on. Let me see. So Jira, tell me who that cheat sheet guy is right there. I don't want to click on his fucking link. Hold on. I was like, just Trump fucking his kid? That's fine. You know, like he made that kid. It's his right to sleep with her. That's not actually how it works out though. But I don't care about Donatello at fucking 4 a.m. 4:40. Uh, Again, she remembered Dan asking her if she liked him before she found the star ball. I like that better. Yeah, that, unconscious. Okay, so again, she remembered Dan asking her if she liked him before she found the. Again, Freya remembered Dan asking her if she liked him before she found the star ball. She was caught in a royal of uncertainty. Thought cast her into a royal of uncertainty, wondering if she really cared about Dan or if he really cared about her. Maybe he was in thrall, a slave to a little black shard buried in his palm. The whole thing could be part of the orb's plan to keep her alive. Unconsciously, Freya was rubbing her fingertip against the place where she'd been pierced. She thought of the zero process running at the top of the list. The zero process, the dead whiteboards, Karhu's sunken eyes. What did it all mean? What did the starball want? There was a hopeless feeling that the orb was too alien and inscrutable. She would never understand. I would help you if I could, Freya thought to the orb. She leaned back into Dan to reassure herself he was still there. For unity, she would pay any price. Without it, she was nothing at all. Freya had wound herself up too much to get back to sleep. She looked out the window, searching for the dawn, but it was too early. The snow was still coming down hard, and she wondered how much it had accumulated. Behind her, she could feel Dan stiffening. Must be a good dream, she smirked. Yeah, she wriggled back against him. Duh, 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 duh. So behind her, so this is the part where we gotta get through this chapter. What do we got here? Hmm. 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 Dan was only dreaming. Hmm. Freya wanted to join him. All right, so Freya smirked. All right, here. Freya had wound herself up too much to get back to sleep. She looked out the window, searching for the dawn, but it was too early. The snow was still coming down hard, and she wondered how much had accumulated. Behind her, she could feel Dan stiffening. Must be a good dream. Freya smirked and wriggled back against him, and wriggled back, grinding her butt against Dan. She felt him swelling in response. She waited for him to wake, but his breathing remained deep and slow. He was only dreaming. Freya wanted to join him. She wished for unity, but it didn't come. She was getting hot. Freya. Hmm. Let me see. Mm-hmm. Instead, she was left frustrated. Hmm. It was frustrating. She felt him throbbing against her. She only had. Uh. It was frustrating. He was throbbing against her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is. That's too much. Dan felt so warm against her. She only had to slip her hand down and adjust him slightly, and he would be right where she wanted. Yeah, that's an improvement there. God, every fucking paragraph is going to be that hard. Hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. For this chapter, replace every letter R with a W. Fuea, bit hoa, lip, and wizisted the. Oh God, it's fucking awful. Ah, Elmer goddamn Fudd writing our sex scene. All right, Freya bit her lip and resisted the urge. It would be so wrong. He wasn't ready. He deserved to be awake for his first time. But she was very wet. All she could think about was how good he would feel sliding against her. Finally, she didn't trust herself to hold back any longer. She forced herself to get out of bed and padded silently to the bathroom. She closed the door, then she brushed her teeth and peed by candlelight. Not until we're united, Freya resolved. Yeah, it's totally. Oh, this whole chapter is cursed. When people are criticizing this in the future and like shaking their fucking heads and being like, Jesus Christ, I just want them to know that it was not for want of effort. Like I'm trying to fix this really and truly. I know it's a problem, and I'm giving it like the best that I can. So Jira, he says, I want to apologize for asking you about pear art. I did not know that was a joke made by someone who hated you. I legit thought you had pear art. I was bamboozled. I'm sorry I brought it up. So I don't know if Jira is in the stream right now, but I'm really not sad about it. Like I do have weird art all over my apartment. It's just not of pears. It's like all abstract 3D printings and whatnot. The Foya speak. Oh yeah. No, I mean this chapter is fully deserving of criticism. Like we go into so much unnecessary detail here, and I think for the reader it's really creepy and disorienting, right? And that's why we've edited this chapter like 3 times, and why we need to make some significant cuts right here. I'm aware this is too much, but at the same time, a lot of the promise of this book is that kind of naked lunch. We're going to have like that unfaltering Michael Jackson gaze directly into the asshole of the matter, and that's not easy to nail, right? Um, this kind of hyper specificity is almost always like a bad idea for just about any writer, and it's kind of vain of me for me to think that I can get away with it. But I am that vain. Like I do think that we can have this crazy shit in this book. I just want to do everything that we can to make sure that our choices are justified and so forth. Like if we look at the beginning of the chapter, the work that we've done so far, there's all really weak writing, right? Like the very start, every single paragraph, there's been something that we could change here to make it stronger. And when you want to take these giant leaps, you. So Lion says sex is gross. You'll see. Like I don't think you've gotten to the degree. I'll tell you one of the things. As I'm like working on editing this, I really am like I do have like a lot more Puritan shit rattling around upstairs than I thought I did. And like I've done like a bunch of crazy shit in my lifetime there. Like I said, I lived in New Orleans for a long time. I used to be like as impassive as a fucking doctor seeing titties every day because I had seen so many of them. And I got into so many weird scrapes and so forth. And still in the back of your mind, there's like, I don't want to talk about people blowing each other, assholes getting eaten or whatever there. And definitely, I feel like critically examining, like, why does this make you feel uncomfortable? And like, are you just afraid of like putting down something that's true, or is it just like weird and prurient and like doesn't have any artistic merit? So, but yeah, like I would be a fool to think that this is not excessive. She waited until she felt more in control and then crept back to the side of the bed. Dan's face was illuminated in the fireplace. The soft light of the fireplace illuminated Dan's face. She expected him to be serene, but his brow was lined. His arms were twitching in the dream, still stretched out in the space where she'd been. He misses me, Freya thought. All right, what did I add here? Needs another pass badly, and I said to consult with an actual cocksucker for this scene, which I think is, that still fucking stands. We should probably get somebody more experienced at sucking dick than yours truly to do some fact checking right here, because like I'm sure that there are things that I'm not considering. Mm. It ached wonderfully. It hurt in a wonderful way. She wanted to dive back into his arms and cover his face with kisses. Instead, she lifted the comforter, trying to figure out how she could get back in bed without waking Dan. When she looked down, she could see part of him was still wide awake. Oh yeah, see that's like a weird euphemistic. Yeah, see, it feels like that should have some shit like that there. Looks so stupid. Oh God, so rough. Hmm. The idea of waiting felt impossible. She wanted to pounce, to climb on top of him and grind against that. Uh, yeah, yeah. She wanted to pounce, to grind on top of him until he looked up at her with those big, beautiful eyes and whispered, "Please." Her hand slipped between her legs at the thought, and she was on fire. Would it be okay to wake him up for this? Would he be angry? Mm. Uh, that what led me to this moment laugh. Yeah. Jesus. So yeah, the trimming is helping here. The idea. She was on fire. She tried to find the nerve to wake him. Her eyes were fixated on his erection, her mouth full of saliva. Mm. Yeah, I kind of want to avoid saying like her mouth is watering for dick, which seems like a little bit uh, excessive and unnecessary. Mm. So people are saying can't have anything unnecessary or excessive during blowjob chapters. And I just want you to understand that having a blowjob chapter is in itself excessive. I mean, the vast majority of readers, like the amount of sex that they are willing to stomach in a book is like PG-13, like it's implied. You see like a little tit and then fade to black. You know what I mean? The next morning, cooking breakfast, right? And like we have to keep in mind that our like age target for this book is probably women who are like, I don't know, 14 to 28. Like that's around the range where we can think at. And um, women in general are even more put off by a hyperspecificity in their scenes of erotica than most men are. I think men are like more willing to like fixate on the gnarly details. And you know, there's going to be like that's a broad generalization and so forth. But also, I mean, the other part of it is it's not. This is just not good writing. Like the first few edits of this. So it was like if we're just writing a scene and somebody's going to the fucking post office, you can like skate by if like things are a little bit lazy. If it's in service of the plot, this is not in service of the plot. This is just here because I want it to be in the story. So it really has to be much better. But yeah, yeah, I just have so much work to do to become like a better writer of sex scenes. I should like take a fucking course or something. I bet that a lot of it is like that like jazz type, the notes that you're not playing thing, like that like unsaid words have more power than said words and so forth, and we're just not fucking doing that here at all. Mm. Mm-hmm. Hold on just a second. There we go. Mm-hmm. Ugh. Her hands at the. She tried to find the nerve to wake him. Her eyes were fixated on his erection, and her tongue ran over her lips. Could she do that? Hmm. Anyone listening intently is either clutching pearls or melting them. Wow. Uh, hmm. Hmm. So this is a spot where, if we're talking 2029, like definitely, I think at that point she would have gone through some kind of sex ed, and she would be aware of the consent issues involved in something like this. Freya had seen plenty of videos. She understood the mechanics, but considering the idea of actually putting her mouth on a penis filled her with anxiety. Mm-hmm. Freya had seen plenty of videos. She understood the mechanics. But now that she was actually considering putting a penis in her mouth, she was filled with anxiety. What if Dan woke up and freaked out? What if she wasn't good at it? You were supposed to talk this kind of thing over. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the idea of turning this into a reflection on What if it felt gross? What if she wasn't good at it? What if Dan woke up and freaked out? You were supposed to talk this kind of thing over to get consent. I like the watch plenty of videos part. Mm. There we go. Mm. 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 Let's see. I like that there's like actually some deliberation in the scene where she's like actually considering what's going on. So Oh, what's up, Jordan? Oh, yeah, we're just working on this 12-page long blowjob scene. So, holla holla. So rough. Jordan was like, no. Yeah, man. It's our own fault. I wrote us into this. And I got to get us out of here. We are making some progress on it, though. Mm-hmm. Is Freya an adult now or what? No, she's still 16, man. Um, which I think I don't want to get into like age of consent issues or whatever there. Oh wait, is what I oh wait, is there like some law against? No, I don't think there's a law. You just couldn't post this to like Literotica, and probably Twitch would be none too happy with this if we were to be mass reported or something like that. But I don't know, man. Yo, I was doing this shit when I was 16. Not a lot of it, believe me. But uh, so Jordan O lost his virginity when he was 15 to a 16-year-old. Yeah, I mean the age gap between these two is like 2 years, right? This, to my eye, it's like an entirely appropriate relationship between the two of them. I know there's like a lot of hysteria around, oh, they're not like fucking 18 or whatever. But that's mostly just an American thing. Everywhere else in the world, people are like a little bit more reasonable. And I think by the time you're like 15, 16, like you're not old enough to make good decisions, but you're going to make decisions anyway. You know what I mean? I see. Yeah, first person I was ever with was like 9 years older than I was. So just putting it out there. Like, and I have zero regrets. It was like a wonderful relationship. Um, Mm-hmm. Moment. Lol, nice. Even after their bath, he had an intense animal smell. It was the kind of thing she'd expected to be gross, but instead, she felt driven, suddenly white. So that's just pheromones. You know what I'm saying? Those are a real fucking thing, man. Like, yeah, definitely. If you're with somebody where like for whatever reason, like your immune systems are uh like out of sync or something like that, it's literally like there's a knob in your brain and somebody's just like redlining it right there, and you just fucking have to have each other. Wow, there's a Noam Chomsky quote up on my screen. It says, "Everyone's worried about stopping terrorism. Well, there's a really easy way: stop participating in it." Um, and like I'm a big fan of Noam. I don't agree with all of well, obviously, I don't know why you need to qualify things like that. Like if you're a fan of somebody, it doesn't intrinsically mean that you support all of their positions or whatever. And he's got some far out ones, but I'm I'm like pretty much 100% on his foreign policy. Um, like the idea of asymmetrical warfare and our culpability, especially in the Middle East. Um, just the idea that people don't just fucking forget when you bomb the shit out of them. You know, they grow up remembering, and then they will have their revenge. I like that idea. Um, and the what he's proposing right there is this idea of stop participating in it. I want you to imagine a world in which like somebody brings a bomb onto an airliner in his fucking shoe, and he tries to detonate it and doesn't kill anybody and just burns himself. And instead of us then making every single human being take their shoes off every time that they get into an airplane, we just say, yeah, sometimes fucking idiots are going to blow up airplanes. And we just stop, right? What if instead of, you know, anally probing everybody that flies on a plane, we just say, yeah, like from time to time, we're going to lose one or two of these planes and it's okay. It's not the end of the world, right? What if we understood that, like, from time to time, radicals are going to do terrible things, and we don't then like have to start a war against a country that has nothing to fucking do with us, or whatever. We can just be like, all right, you know, you've done this thing. It's a tragedy, but there's no acceptable response other than be like, what a bunch of fucking assholes. Um, because the way that asymmetrical warfare works is that you're a tiny little person and you propel a big agency into doing something gigantic and stupid. Like everybody taking off their shoes every single day. Just think about how many hours of effort that is, right? All the people that fly every day. We're talking about thousands of lifetimes of removing shoes, just in man hours and productivity, that like slight stop that each of us have to do. Like, think about all the people that have to be employed just so that people can take off their fucking shoes. And at the end of the day, for something that didn't even fucking work. And this is how asymmetrical warfare, terrorism, etc. works. It's because big lumbering agencies are stupid, and every action that they take is monstrously inefficient, and yet they feel that they must do something, right? Like the idea that to do nothing is weak, um, is like one of the more damning issues that we face as like a species. The idea that if inaction is always weak, and there's never a point where you can just like look at something and be like, that's not worth our time. It's probably not worth our time to respond to fucking North Korean provocations or whatever. It's probably not worth our time to get embroiled with some nonsense in Iran. And I think most of the people gandering at all this as they're going on, who are at the top involved in making those decisions, are aware like these things are not worth their time. It's just politically advantageous to do some of these things. Like they need attention off of some other bullshit that they're doing there. Ooh, and we all pay the price. Anyhow, let's back to the blowjob. She slipped into bed, bringing her face close to him. Even after their bath, Dan had an intense animal smell. Instead, she felt driven, suddenly wide awake in the moment. She paused, wondering and trying to gauge how she felt, wondering if she really wanted to do this. She did. Freya moved forward and kissed Dan softly, feeling warmth on her lips. He didn't wake up. She wasn't sure what she'd expected. It was just like kissing. It was like kissing any other part of him, just warmer. She kissed him again, a little harder, and she could feel him getting bigger. Hmm. She did. Freya moved forward and kissed Dan softly. He didn't wake up. She wasn't sure what she'd expected. It was just like kissing any other part of him, just warmer. She kissed him again, a little harder, and she could feel him getting bigger beneath her lips. She drew her head back. Drew her head back is what? Wishing there were more light, she was fascinated. A tiny droplet was forming at the tip of his penis, gleaming in the firelight. He likes this, Freya told herself. She was curious. She slipped her tongue out and tasted him. She expected it to be salty as seawater, but it was lighter, more basic. She felt a slight numbing feeling at the tip of her tongue and against her lips, so faint she was unsure if she was only imagining it. Oh, well, now we can get into what chemicals are in ejaculate. I think it's too extreme. Hmm. A tingle so faint she was unsure if she was only imagining it. Freya remembered the way he'd pulsed in her hand and shot everywhere last night. Hmm. Mm-hmm. The idea made her hot. Is trembled too much there? Ugh. How long? Well, congratulations. We've just spent fucking 2 hours working on this. Not even close to through it. I mean, this is only really the like part of actually sucking dick is only like 2 pages, but the lead up is pretty extensive. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Part of her found the idea revolting, but it was a small voice shouted down by thrumming desire. Freya parted her lips and slipped Dan into her mouth. She held him there without any pressure. No, I just noticed that in this whole book we don't say whether or not this dude is circumcised, which is um I guess a big factor in this scene. I had not really put a lot of time thinking about my character's dick, and now we're in the position where we pretty much have to. He's American. He's probably chopped. Mm, yeah, again, that's probably not what it feels like. Um, Dan was making dreamy little sounds. She began to slide her mouth back and forth, wondering if she could wake him up with an orgasm. Slowly, she began to feel the pulse of his dorsal vein against her tongue. It wasn't bad, it was just new. Freya sealed her lips around him and began to run her tongue around, experimenting. Dan was making dreamy little sounds. She began to slide her mouth back and forth, wondering if she could wake him up with an orgasm. She couldn't. Dan woke her up while she was going down on him and made a startled noise. Hmm. Jerked awake. Hmm. That's not good. Okay, so she couldn't. Dan jerked awake while she was going down on him. Uh-huh. Lol, my parents were up while my mom was getting ready for work, and the house was quiet, except for me intermittently sounding like I was narrating a steamy romance novel. Well, I don't know how steamy it is right here. and she fought the urge to gag. In his confusion, Dan was trying to grab her shoulder, but his hand was too weak from sleep. She hoped she hadn't hurt him. Freya looked up at Dan with his penis in her mouth, searching his face in the dim light. Was he okay? Was he upset? It was impossible to read him in the faint light of the fireplace. Mm-hmm. So she couldn't. Dan jerked awake while she was going down on him. His right leg twitched, and the sudden movement made him hit the back of her throat. In his confusion, Dan was trying to grab her shoulder, but his hand was too weak from sleep. She hoped she hadn't hurt him. Freya looked up at Dan with his penis in her mouth, searching his face. Oh, we can take that out of there. Freya looked up at Dan, searching his face. Was he okay? Was he upset? It was impossible to read him in the faint light of the fireplace. She slipped her mouth off him, suddenly sure she had made a terrible mistake. She was just about to apologize when he spoke. Sorry, I was just surprised. You don't have to stop. Do you like it? All right, so we'll try to get this dial. Is it okay? Is it okay? Yeah, of course. Well, that's like a weirdly Canadian interaction right there. If they heard it, I bet they were like, "What the fuck is he listening to?" I too am like, "What the fuck am I listening to?" And I'm the one that wrote this bullshit. So, Freya looked up at Dan, searching his face. Was he okay? Was he upset? It was impossible to read him in the faint light of the fireplace. She slipped her mouth off him, suddenly sure she had made a terrible mistake. She was just about to apologize when he spoke. Oh, wow. Sorry, you just surprised me. Still sounding sleepy and befuddled. Oh, wow. Sorry, you just surprised me. Is it okay? Yeah, I can stop. Okay, so this sounds like much more like a conversation that I might have had when I was like 18, getting woken up by being blown. Oh, wow. Sorry. I was just surprised. Is it okay? Yeah, I can stop. No, you don't have to. I like it. All right. That's a good, that's like so much sweeter than what we had before. No, you don't have to. I like it. Dan reached out a hand and stroked the side of her face. Mm-hmm. Good morning, Freya said, trying to sound sultry. Okay, so let's pause here for coffee, because I need like a little bit more. And also, I want to stop writing the scene for a fucking second. We're making big improvements to this scene. Like, I really thought that this scene was fucking horseshit. And like, it bothered me all day yesterday. Like, I couldn't wait to get here and start fixing it. And I think, like, what was really dragging the scene down was it was too much porno and not like enough focus on this is something that is new and young people like trying to work their way around this and they don't quite know what they're doing. And it's okay, like we have Freya being like much more in control and an initiator here. So I think I would like to play up a little bit that like Dan is a little bit more awkward and unsure because they're like their power dynamic between the two of them is a lot of her calling the shots. She's like, uh, even though like her character type is like fairly introverted, she's more of like the dynamic A type personality deciding what they're going to do. And I like that that's reflected there. I don't like typical like, oh, you know, I'm a girl and I'm gonna be passive in bed and like whatever happens to me happens or whatever. Like plenty of girls that are just like that, totally fine. You can do whatever the fuck you want in this sack. But when we're writing about it, I definitely want like a more dynamic female character that has more agency and more like she can be in the driver's seat with this dude. Later on, we'll see what the fuck happens. But yeah, let's take a slight break while I get coffee. I'll be back. Mm. Let me see. So Spaethiwa says, I didn't sleep all night and was in meetings all mornings. I see where we're still stroking shafts. Yeah, we're doing it like a little bit more expertly than we were before. By the way, the coffee that we're drinking this week is Anodyne Coffee. They're out of Milwaukee, and this is their Atomic Blend. I'm like tasting like, so the thing about cold brew is like I just took it. Oh, I guess it's just been sitting overnight, right? And I've started bottling it, so there's less air in it oxidizing it rather than like this big flask decanter type thing that I had there. So yeah, like the flavor of this changes a little bit as you're drinking it. And I just poured another glass, and I'm like, there's like a faint, not unpleasant, but like taste of mustard on the back end of this whole thing. Let me make sure I'm not imagining that. Yeah, like one of the like a very like one of the chemical notes of like mustard is somehow in that coffee. So maybe I'm being poisoned by mustard gas, but more likely it's just like some weird element of the blend or whatever there. But I'm like really enjoying the. Okay. Dan reached out a hand and stroked the side of her face. She smiled back at him, wrapping her hand around the shaft of his penis and tightening her grip. Enjoying the way he twitched in her hand. She watched his eyes carefully, trying to make sure she wasn't gripping too hard. She began to slide her hand up and down, enjoying a new urgency in his expression. He was lifting himself up from the bed to thrust into her hand. She gripped tighter and watched his eyes roll upward. Good morning, Freya said, trying to sound sultry. Whatever he said back Whatever he tried to say back came out as more moan than language. Whatever he tried to say back came out as more moan than language. Lie back, she instructed, feeling a thrill when he did it right away. She drew the comforter off him and climbed over his legs to take him in her mouth again. She drew the comforter off him and maneuvered them so she wasn't about to fall off the bed. When she looked up to see how she was doing, Dan was wincing. Are you okay? Does that hurt? She asked. No, well, he said. Dan fumbled with embarrassment. Your teeth, it's just a little too much. Okay, like that. This feels like so much more of a real scene than it did before. Ah, I love that we can have like just like a totally bullshit scene where I've gone off of the rails, right? Like, imagine how awful it would be if we didn't get to edit, and like how many years I spent where I just really didn't do this kind of like real in-depth editing. How much bullshit I try to get away with, and how really kind to me every editor that I've ever had has been. Like there have been very few times, like many of them have like taken me aside and been like, I don't know about this. You know, they always have to like couch it in this like nobody has ever, no editor that I've ever had has just been like, hey, this is fucking garbage and you need to rewrite the entire thing. And now that I'm like reading through this and like objectively editing myself, I realize, you know, so much of what I write actually is straight garbage and needs some significant rewriting. And it's just up until this point in my career, I was not putting in the work that I needed to, right? Like it's a lot of fucking work. You know, I mean, you've seen it, like 58 days straight of editing this, and just really, it's like some labor that we're putting down here, but um, you know, I think this is what was missing from my process, right? This grinding, continual refusal to accept like this garbage output, where I know that we're capable of better if we all just work on it here. So I'm real happy about that. I know it's like weird to say when we're writing a chapter that will almost certainly get cut, right? I don't think you're allowed to write this kind of stuff in a book that you would like to see any kind of meaningful distribution. But yeah, I love in all of my work, I love iteration, right? I like revisions to things. I like taking a process and tweaking it and trying to do something a little bit different. I like the way that minor changes can snowball. It's like those weird paintings that you see on our intro and our outro and everything. I love watching how just we have like that little cube and then all the ripples and eddies that will come as a consequence of that. And you know, today we're trying like a slightly different tact. It didn't work the last couple of days when we were trying to edit this, and here we're trying to focus like much more on what our characters are feeling. Think much more of them as like essentially children just starting to discover this new frame of existence, and I think it's much better. Maybe still garbage, but I like it. Uh, no, well, Dan fumbled with embarrassment. Your teeth, it's just a little too much. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to stop? No. Don't. Just, don't stop. Just, less teeth if you can. She wanted to quit and hide her face, but she felt like she had to go on. She wanted to quit, but she felt like she had to go on. She lowered her eyes and tried a different way, letting her lips fold back over her teeth. and cradling with her tongue. Dan made a sound and she hesitated, afraid that she'd messed up again. Yeah, like that, Dan assured her. She continued, ramping up the pressure slowly, searching for the right way. Dan was rising back against her, trying to get more of himself into her mouth. She liked the sounds he was making, little restrained gas. She liked the sounds Dan was making, little restrained gas, like he wanted to be quiet, but he couldn't. That's one of my favorite things about sex myself is um, the the sounds that people make. Like if I were deaf, I think I would just go impotent for the most part. Well, probably not to that extreme, but yeah, it's like such the way that people sound is such like a big part of my attraction to them in bed. And like I've never seriously dated somebody who had a bad voice. Everybody that I've dated, um, I have thought that they've had like a great voice. Like I could just listen to them talk all day long. And yeah, it's like one of the most important things to me. Apologies to anybody who's listening, who I dated and stopped dating. Uh, like you don't have any control over your voice. Well, you have some, but don't feel bad. There's plenty of other dudes in the sea who will not subject you to continual blogging about their writing struggle and their 12-page blowjob scenes. Real talk. Dan was gripping his inner thigh with his left hand. His leg muscles were tense. His other found so his other hand slipped down her shoulder and found her left breast. Freya shut her eyes and made an urgent sound with her mouth full. Freya could feel Dan throbbing in her mouth, and she knew he was close. Suddenly she realized she had no idea what to do now. She had an awful fear he might gag and throw. She had an awful fear she might gag and throw up if he came in her mouth. Mm-hmm. But a low certainty undermined the thought. Hadn't. She'd come too far for that, and she didn't want to stop. Dan's whole body tensed as he came. Her mouth was full of the taste of him. She could feel each individual spasm. It looks so wrong there. She could feel each individual spurt. The hot, tingling feeling from before was much intense now. It's a convulsion. The tingling feeling from before was much more intense now. She could feel each individual spurt of his orgasm. The tingling feeling from before was much more intense now. She didn't know what she was supposed to do. She kept going until he gripped her shoulder. His eyes were wide open with alarm. It was too much. She swallowed everything and felt a little ashamed of herself. She ran her tongue around her mouth. Something was missing. She hadn't come and didn't feel like she could. Had Unity ruined her for normal sex? What if she couldn't get off without it? Dan crashed back against the bed with a contented sound. He was almost purring. At least he seemed happy. Freya felt empty and dejected, wondering if this was a mistake. The idea had seemed so daring and adult, but now she felt a little tarnished. Why did the unity have to end? Everything felt so hollow without it. Neither of them knew what to say. Freya crawled up in bed beside Dan, lying with her back to him. He draped an arm over her, but she felt alone. Hmm. She began to wonder if he would be insulted if she got up and brushed her teeth again. She felt him kissing the back of her neck. Sliding his hand down her stomach. Oh. Don't, she said, too sharply. Are you sure? I want to, Dan offered. Dan offered. She could hear that she'd hurt him. For a moment, she nearly agreed, just so he wouldn't feel bad. Just hug me, please, Freya asked. She couldn't understand how people did this. It was so awkward and difficult. There were words she wanted to say, but she didn't trust herself to say them. She could feel his penis softening against her, and she felt a fleeting and sad. Are you okay? Dan asked. Dan whispered, and she nodded. Her eyes were a little damp. Everything she was feeling was wrong, but she didn't want to put that on him. There was an unsettled feeling in her stomach, and she bit it back. How awful would he feel if she threw up? I miss you, he said quietly, as she turned back to him, peering into his eyes for an answer. Glittering in the darkness was the same discontent. They were incomplete. I miss you too, she said. Freya said. She was so glad he understood. She wanted to kiss him, but she hesitated, afraid he would be grossed out after what she'd done. But Dan wasn't squeamish. He kissed her and pulled her closer to him. They were clenching one another as tightly as they could, something desperate in the way their tongues lashed at each other. No matter how they tried, they couldn't get there. They detached as they waited for the rumblings of a unity that never came. She turned towards the door again, and Dan buried his face in his hair. She knew why. It was as close as he could get to having her inside of him again. Freya shut her eyes and drifted. Soon she felt the little twitches as Dan fell back asleep. She wished she could, too. She wished she could. She envied him. The first rays of dawn were lighting the snow outside. As the sun stole into the room, Freya felt the pull of a half-buried habit. No, this is a bad sentence. She didn't want to be found. Golden light was climbing across the floor. She was slipping into a flimsy daydream. Golden light climbed across the floor, and she slipped into it. Golden light climbed across the floor as she slipped into a flimsy daydream, the sort that would dissolve at the slightest interruption. She was picturing them leaving the hotel, bundled in their cloaks with the Toyota's heater cranked as high as it could go. They pulled up to Waterford Road, about to turn east and return home to Silas. But then Dan looked over at her with a smile and turned the other way, just as unity began to echo around them. They would head west to Chicago, southwest to Denver, and then across the Rockies. The Toyota would pull them through Utah and Nevada, all the way to the Pacific Ocean, 3,000 miles away where no one could find them, where the winter would never catch her again. Where the winter would never catch Freya, could never catch Freya again. The sunlight caught her instead, shining into her eyes, and the impossible dream broke apart. Of course they couldn't do that. Her money would run out and they'd be stranded on the wrong side of the country, living in a car. Living in a car. The Toyota probably couldn't even make it there. Her guitar was at home. She couldn't possibly leave it behind. It was all a childish fantasy. When Dan found it in Unity, she didn't know if he would laugh at her or pity her. Freya slipped free from his grasp and went to the bathroom to brush her teeth. Afterwards, she stared at her reflection, trying to decide who she was. It's a good one. Oh, we did it. Oh, my God. I think habit needs to be mentioned here. Why would she think of... Oh, okay. I think that's a fair comment right there. But did I actually already mention habit? She usually did around this time. It was usually the first thing she did in the morning. But the battery was dead and she had no intention of charging it. She didn't want to be found. But by now her battery would be dead. But her battery was dead by now, and she had no intention of charging it. She didn't want to be found. Yeah, I think that's a really good note right there. I mean, it's okay to just have like somebody apropos of nothing being like, I should check my phone. Because that's how brains work. But it's stronger there, where it's usually the first thing she does every morning. And here, we have the idea that something is different because she's not tethered to her phone. I don't think mechanically it's important in the story, but that's a slight improvement there. All right, how long have we been going here? We've been going for fucking since like 3 hours. Probably I should stop. Let me see what this comment is. Okay, well, what we got to do, we can have that comment there, which is an old comment. It doesn't matter anymore. So we're at, yeah, we're getting behind here of our quota because it's day 58 right here. We're like 18 pages behind because we spent so much time like redoing that chapter. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'd like to edit more, but I'm definitely out of energon to do so. So I gotta bid you guys a good morning. We fixed that fucking chapter. That chapter that was so garbage is significantly better. Thank you, Spathy Wofford. Thank you, people, for bearing with me through this and other uncomfortable sex scenes. I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make them less god awful. And I think this one, this is a strong scene, right? It's very teenage and awkward, right? Um, there are mistakes that definitely I have had people make during sex, and I have mistakes that I've made during sex, and this will lend. So, kind of the idea of this whole scene right here, where things are like awkward and weird, and she feels like incomplete and everything. A lot of that is that we want to have a contrast between like this very easy togetherness that they have when they can read each other's thoughts. Uh, so, I gotta go check out the Wheaton Kid. So I really want to be able to edit more, but I can feel like that loopy, like I just do not have it at the moment. Okay, so we have the other show tonight. If you know what that's all about, yeah, we should try and do something like a little bit different with that. So I'll see you guys later, and then tomorrow morning we get to work on chapter fucking 75. I wish I didn't have to go to work today, and like I could just do another chapter, but sadly I must. All right, so thank you all for being a part of this. Keep the hood in your heart and never get high on your own supply.